All right, the Congressional Budget Office releasing its latest budget and economic outlook, projecting debt will hit a record in just 5 years. It continues to get worse. The debt is expected to grow from 97% of GDP at the end of fiscal year 2022 to 107% of GDP by 2028, and it continues higher from there. The report comes as lawmakers are working to negotiate a deal to raise the debt ceiling ahead of the June deadline. Joining us right now is the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget President, Maya MacGuineas. Maya, it's good to see you. Thanks very much. This is about to have a real showdown. The Committee for a Responsible Budget has released its analysis of the CBO's budget and economic outlook. And what we heard from the CBO the other day was just downright scary. How would you assess things right now?
Yeah, Maria, the news that came out of the Congressional Budget Office was really, really bad. It was chilling, and hopefully this will get lawmakers to take seriously the negotiations that they're in the midst of on how to raise the debt ceiling. And let me just say, there should be no talk of default. It's really dangerous. But the idea of raising the debt ceiling while doing something important on the budget and on the debt is a really good idea, or moving it into the actual budget process and making sure that the president puts forth his budget, the budget committees do theirs, and they actually work out some kind of a package to generate savings. If I can dig into the numbers a little, one thing we really learned is that in the coming 5 years, in the next presidential term, there will be some very serious and dangerous milestones which we will hit. Our debt as a share of GDP will be the highest it has ever been in the history of this country, and that includes right after World War II. There's no reason we should be at those levels at this moment. Another thing we'll see is the Medicare Trust Fund, Part A, running out, becoming insolvent and unable to pay full amounts to providers that's owed. And finally, one thing that really grabbed my attention, our attention, was that interest payments will actually be more expensive than how much we spend on defense just in the next president's term. That's how much interest payments, which are the fastest growing part of the budget, are going to be growing. They will be the third largest program in our entire budget, right after Social Security and Medicare.
That's incredible. And that, as the interest rates go higher, that number goes up. So what's the interest? What are you talking about? Like half a trillion, hundreds of billions of dollars just in interest?
Half a trillion, yeah. And over 10 years, 10 trillion plus.
Oh my God.
We will spend more than $10 trillion on interest payments. Just a few years ago, when interest rates were low, you had all sorts of economists clamoring, saying, borrow more, it's so cheap, it's almost free. That wasn't true then, because when you borrow money, when the government borrows money, it just means it's saying, you don't have to pay for it. Someone down the road is going to pay for it. Yeah. That means younger workers or our kids. But it also means that when interest rates go up, we are so much more vulnerable because we're carrying a much higher debt load, which is the situation we have now.
Yeah. Well, once again, the administration claims it's fine, that they actually cut the deficit. Joe Biden talks about that all the time. The president said it again in his State of the Union. And you write that the fiscal outlook is far worse than last year due to legislation, executive actions, and economic changes. This is all policy related. These are just mistakes.
Yeah, no, we've tried to fact check this every time the White House has made that claim, and it's very frustrating because they know better. The fact is the deficit came down because the COVID spending was running off. It was all automatic changes as a result of us coming out of the pandemic. Yeah. But if you actually look at the policies that were passed, both from a bipartisan Congress and executive orders from the president, the deficit was much, much worse due to all the policies that were passed. And because it was a dangerously high inflationary year, the thing that we should have been doing on fiscal policy was not sitting around and borrowing more and making the situation worse. The way you fight inflation through the budget is you bring your deficit spending down as aggressively as you can. We did just the opposite, and you saw that inflation is still a problem and going to still be a problem this year. We're not out of the woods on inflation at all.
What is it, $5 trillion plus in borrowing in the last 2 years, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
You know what gets me?
There's no reason.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
So I was just going to say that. Well, it made sense that we were borrowing during COVID at the end of the Trump presidency. When Biden started the American Rescue Plan, it was too large. It led to inflation. You could have borrowed something, but it was way too large. But all of the subsequent borrowing was completely misplaced, misdirected. You shouldn't be doing that when the economy is strong, particularly when there's inflation. And this country has to get back into the habit of you borrow if there's an emergency or a major economic downturn, and then when the economy is strong, you don't borrow. You come back down to reasonable levels You could borrow very little or even run budget surpluses if we were really willing to go back to what the pattern should be.
Yeah, well, when this really becomes a crisis that everybody understands is when the stock market starts selling off on it, okay?
Oh, yeah.
Mark Tepper, so far markets don't, they haven't focused on this, but markets don't care about debt and deficits until they care about debt and deficits.
And they will, and you'll see the market likely to sell off, I don't know, 10, 20% as we approach that debt ceiling in June, July. Look, I've got a question for you about entitlements. When we look at entitlement spending, I think it's roughly 2/3 of our budget right now. And in a decade or so, we're going to exhaust the trust funds. There's only going to be enough money coming in from tax revenues to pay out, I think, 77% of Social Security benefits. When are we going to have the courage to address this thing head on? I mean, if you think about it, there are so many demographic challenges to the entitlement programs as they're currently set up today. When Social Security was rolled out, I believe in the 1940s, there were like 40 plus workers for every one retiree. Now there's like 2.5 workers for every one retiree. People are living longer. We're having fewer babies. There are some big time challenges for these entitlements. When are we going to deal with it head on before we end up in 2032, 2033, and all of these seniors take a 23% pay cut?
Yeah, thank you. As Maria knows, this is one of the gravest concerns that the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget has, which is we have not made changes to these programs when we know they are headed towards insolvency, Social Security and Part A of Medicare. And in fact, now I thought the State of the Union was really, really politics at its worst to watch both parties cheering the notion of not fixing Social Security and Medicare.
Yeah.
What that means, as you just laid out, really, and I thought the visual of that, sort of all these senior lawmakers cheering, protecting their own benefits, and ignoring the fact and not leveling with the American people that these programs are going to become insolvent quite soon, and today's retirees are going to have across-the-board benefit cuts. Younger workers are not going to get what they've been promised.
Yeah.
But when the insolvency hits Social Security, CBO says in a decade, Social Security trustees say a little bit longer, what will happen is there will be really brutal across-the-board benefit cuts for everybody.
Yeah.
For the wealthy retiree who's fine, but for the widow who's 90 and depends on the program for all of her benefits. And instead of doing their jobs and fixing this program now, or 10 or 20 years ago when we knew it was a problem, in a way that would avoid hurting people, they just delayed and now promise not to do anything. That's the most reckless promise they could make.
And you know what I'm not hearing at all is a plan to fix this stuff. It's all politics all the time. You heard Joe Biden in the State of the Union, John Levine. He's telling us that the Republicans want to cut Social Security. Where's the plan? Maya just said it. The CBO is projecting Social Security, Medicare, and the Highway Trust Fund will be insolvent by the end of the decade. So what are we doing about it?
No, there's just no plan at all. And really, it's just both parties don't want to sink their teeth into what's necessary here. At the end of the day, we talk about fixes to Social Security. It's going to come down to either raising the age or increasing the contributions that people have to make. And neither of those are very palatable options. Right. So both parties have avoided for years tackling this issue.
Mike Baker.
You know how you get the bold decisions, how you get the actual action is term limits. You take the self-interest out of this, and all they're doing right now is focusing on the next election.
Yep.
Create term limits. Now, the problem is that's never going to happen. So this is an inevitable train wreck.
It should happen. That's what I've been saying now for a long time. We need term limits. We can't have these guys and gals going in there and staying there for 40, 50 years. They forget who they're working for. Maya, do you see any light in terms of a plan?
I think the critical thing to focus on right now is once we get through this debt ceiling, and again, we need to land this plane properly, which means don't talk about default, don't threaten default. We have to raise the debt ceiling. That's the borrowing from the past. At the same time, we need to agree no new borrowing. The way that you are fiscally responsible is not lifting the debt ceiling and paying our old bills. It's not incurring new bills. But I also hope we'll come up with some kind of a plan. Maybe it will be spending caps, maybe a helpful commission. That will be part of that. But as soon as we get through that, we have to really push back on this don't touch Social Security and show that to be what it is, which is a promise for across-the-board benefit cuts. Very quickly, we will be in the race for president. I think one of the most important things is that we have really a requirement that anybody who is running for president talks about how they would fix these important programs rather than letting their trust funds hit insolvency. No one who's running for president should be able to duck this issue, because what we need is a real plan. And there are plenty of ways to fix Social Security and Medicare. They're not painless anymore. They would have been if we'd done them before when we started warning about it. But we can still get it done, and it's so much better than if you wait to the last moment when it really will be very painful for a lot of people who depend on the programs.
Yeah, watch this. Every candidate will duck the question.
Oh, no one wants to do
Every
this.
candidate. In
Political suicide.
Watch this. Okay. Maya, it's good to see you. Thanks very much for the dose of reality. Maya MacGuineas joining us this morning. We'll see you soon, Maya.